This is Darrell Evans with Kings Vision at LAKings.com with Kings insider John Rosen. Well, John, the draft is upon us here, the 2013 draft. Always an important time and an exciting time of the season. This year, the Kings at this point right now without a first-round pick. Generally, what do you think the Kings are looking to achieve in this draft?
Really just get the best players that are available. Recently just spoke with Brent McEwen, the Los Angeles Kings Western Canada amateur scout. And he really gave us the sense that they're not looking to fill spots because you, again, don't know where spots are going to be perhaps several years down the road. You're just looking for the best player available. The team has its list. They're looking to hopefully select the highest player available on that list. Of course, the team's also been pretty active on draft days in the past. They have 10 draft picks. Expect some of those picks to be used as a package to perhaps move up in the draft coming up tomorrow.
And I know something that happened recently, the trade of Jonathan Bernier, that brought forth a second-round draft choice, possibly this year or next season. But the draft, you'd always try to put together as many draft picks as you can because it can lead to packaging them and moving up in the draft. But I think when you look at the Kings' standpoint, I think they've got to add or look to add in the goaltending department now without Bernier in the mix. Scrivens comes over from Toronto, but there's a promise there of Jonathan Bernier being alongside Jonathan Quick there for a number of years. Marty Jones, still hasn't taken that step where he's been a backup in the NHL. So I think goaltending depth will be an area to look for. And you can never have enough defensemen, as it showed last year. The Kings were exposed on the defensive position. I thought did a great job at making adjustments, but injuries to veterans Willie Mitchell and Matt Green early on, I thought the young guys did a great job. But that'll be an area that they'll look to jump forth and try to make a little bit more depth.
Absolutely, and it seems to be a very strong draft depth-wise this year. Many people compare it to that 2003 draft. You're talking about the goaltending, too. I, too, think that the Kings are going to take perhaps at least one goaltender in this draft, even though Jonathan Quick, his contract, it kicks in next year. He's going to be a King, at least contract-wise, for the next 10 years. You talk about Ben Scrivens. He's a free agent after this coming season. You talk about Martin Jones. That consistency perhaps not quite there. He's building it. He's on the route, hopefully, to becoming that National Hockey League goaltender. The team also did not offer a contract to former second-rounder from 2011, Christopher Gibson, so there certainly is room within the system. You also take a look at JF Berube, who is in the LA Kings system as well, played the last 2 seasons in Ontario, but there does seem to be a need for the Kings to perhaps bring someone in net. You talk about defense. The team always likes to bring in players on defense. You can never have too many defensive draft picks. These are almost like you're building for the future there because it takes them perhaps a little bit more time to develop. But in terms of defense and in net, that seems to be the team's identity, the culture that they're building. Kings will look very strong in those 2 areas.
And another area the Kings will look to improve is to get a little bit more firepower up front. And in previous drafts, you look at Tyler Toffoli, Tanner Pearson, Lyndon Vey. Those players had outstanding years last year in Manchester. Tyler Toffoli got a pretty good taste of the National Hockey League, got some playoff time. He'll be looking to crack the lineup this year. But that'll be another area where the Kings will look to add a little bit more depth, a little bit more firepower. You can never have enough of that as well. I think they're a little bit deeper than they were a couple of years ago prior to acquiring Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, but they'll still look to maybe balance things out and try to get somebody, especially a left-handed shooting left winger.
Well, look, I wouldn't necessarily associate him with consistent offensive firepower, but you look at what Kyle Clifford did in the year that he was drafted back in 2010. He was a second rounder. He joined the Los Angeles Kings, after a very sturdy training camp, and he was somebody that earned a spot on the team as a 19-year-old. So you look at Toffoli, he was a second-round pick. There certainly are players available, especially this year in a deep draft, that could perhaps have that ability to impact the team within several years, perhaps sooner than later. The defensemen, generally speaking, very general, take maybe a couple extra years to develop, but in terms of that firepower, surely they're going to be looking at some of those guys, and that's also something that works well with the trade for Matt Fratton. The fact that though he is generally a right wing, he has played on the left side before. He's somebody that can, perhaps if Tyler Toffoli, if he ends up moving over to that left side and doesn't feel as comfortable over there, Matt Fratton is somebody that can be right there on that spot as well. So the Kings do have options there. They're also going to be looking to add to a little bit of that firepower, find some good forwards in this draft.
I think when you look at the previous drafts, and because of what the Kings have accomplished in the last few years, established themselves at a solid hockey club, having won their first Stanley Cup in franchise history, I think now they can be a little bit more patient with their drafts, and that showed last year. Tyler Toffoli starting the year off in Manchester, Lyndon Vey, Tanner Pearson, all 3 players had an opportunity to play at that level. I think it'll make their stay in the National Hockey League when they eventually get there permanent, and they'll be a lot more prepared for it. So going to be some exciting times. We'll look forward to catching up with you tomorrow as the draft draft goes on, and great seeing you here in New York.
Wonderful working with you again, Choppy. Thank you.
This is Darrell Evans with Kings Vision at LAKings.com with Kings Insider John Rosen from the draft here in New York.